This video is about the process of embodiment, what I would call embodied enlightenment. So before I spoke about two types of enlightenment. The one is a moment-to-moment process of being present, but coming from a place of awareness and completeness to our day-to-day existence. And we could call that that we're already enlightened, we're already divine. But also on the previous video, I spoke about a process of embodiment. In other words, how to become born of that understanding. In other words, to live a life which reflects that understanding, so that we don't have a compartment of our life we call spiritual, which is very peaceful and loving and otherworldly, and we're blissed out after some spiritual experience, but still we suffer incredibly in the world. We feel we have no power, we struggle with our sexual energy, with our emotions, with our hearts, our capacity to love. That's not necessarily, if we're having those issues, we haven't learned yet the process of embodiment. And this is no surprise if we look at a teaching like Buddha's teaching on enlightenment, in which he speaks about 4 stages of enlightenment. First is what you could call Satori in Zen, a flash of awakening. But then he talks about further stages, once being the first stage being what he calls a stream enterer, which is the Satori experience of I am that, of there is no self, of I am the light, the way, I'm one with the Father. You can describe it in so many ways. So this is called the stream enterer. As we have this flash of awakening. Then he says the second stage, he calls that the once returner. And for many people, including people like Eckhart Tolle, they speak about first this profound awakening experience, but then they say there's on average, an 8 to 10 year process of embodying that experience and knowing how to live in a more stable version of it. So we could call that the stage of the once returner. And Buddha said it was the once returner because at that point, he said, if you believe in reincarnation, Buddhist or Hindu perspective also, is that he said you would only come back from one lifetime, because the lifetime you come back for, you're pretty much awake, and you'd work on the finer levels of what you could call your karma or your attachments to philosophy and energy, but that's another conversation. Third stage, he said, of the enlightenment process that he saw in himself and in his students, he calls that the non-returner. That's someone who's been able to stabilize themselves in that state of wakefulness to the point that when they reach the end of their physical experience, remain in that state. And so therefore in philosophy, Eastern philosophy, aren't drawn back to live out more lives of the physical experience. So very quickly, how do we do that? Well, if we're working from a yoga perspective or a Taoist perspective, that is called embodying the sense of awareness slowly through the chakra system. So what does this mean? Let's start by looking at, in this particular video, in the lower 1, 2, 3, 4 chakras, because usually that's what you would spend the first few years working on predominantly to build a strong base for exploring higher states of consciousness. So the base center, this is called the sexual center quite often, and the reason for that is that when we heal this, so we could say an unhealed sexual center is when we crave sexual energy from other people. So we're constantly wanting to sleep with loads of people, maybe. Sex is always on our mind as we're trying to fulfill that energy center by getting the sexual energy from other people. What you would call, as far as a mystic would go, what you would call a healed sexual base center is where the sexual energy, the blissful, you could call it orgasmic experience, is held within the body. In other words, the sexual experience, the bliss, the happiness, the joyfulness that comes with that is just an energy flow that's happening through the body that isn't dependent on getting that from someone else. It's not necessarily that you'll become a celibate in that way, although a lot of people choose to do when they reach that point, because they can generate that sense, that orgasmic energy within themselves. You may still have a beautiful sexual relationship, but it won't be based on need and getting something from someone. Then we have the second embodiment and the second chakra. This is our power chakra. When we're depleted in this energy center, what happens is we have a lack of personal power. So, two things happen. We usually hate people who have power. There's an envy and a jealousy that we can't understand because we feel inferior. And this is because if we're depleted in the second power chakra, we want to get power from the outside. So we either play the victim constantly because that victim consciousness gets us attention and gets us power, or the other flip side of it is we try and have power over people. So we're constantly trying to be in charge and run things, and we're pumped up with pride because we don't feel that we have power. So we're trying to get power from the outside world in some way to face the depletion. When we have power in the second chakra, when that's healed, the power is within us. We don't need the opinion of other people. We're not bothered about how the world sees us. It's just no concern because that power is within us. Third level, emotional center, solar plexus. When this is empty, we want happiness from the outside world. We want to draw in and we demand people give us emotional attention or a positive around us all the time. Or, we're looking to fulfill ourselves from the outside emotionally. When this solar plexus chakra is in alignment, is healed and opened, empowered, the joy is coming from within us. The happiness is coming from within us. These higher vibrational emotional states are already within us. So again, we're not looking for the world to give us happiness or a sense of emotional fulfillment because we're generating it within ourselves. And final one we'll look at today, heart center, what we could call love center. When this is empowered, instead of wanting to get love from God or a divine being or another person and demanding that we be loved, we still might be receptive to that. Of course, that's a beautiful experience. We're communal creatures generally. But the love is shining out of us. This is why saints and Buddhas, they're not looking to get love off everyone. This was what really shines about spiritual masters. Spiritual masters are being that force of love to the world. They're actually just radiating it. This is a healed heart center, a healed and empowered heart center. So just looking at these chakras for the time being, because these are the ones we usually start with. So we build up this chakra energy, we heal these chakras, because then we're not just having a no-self experience now and again in meditation that isn't embodied in the way that we live our lives in the world. We start to embody it. The sexual energy, the joyful sexual energy is available within our being. Personal power is available, so where we feel powerful within ourselves. Emotional joyfulness and happiness become more of our nature, and our capacity to feel love from an internal source, we could call it that higher source, whatever you want to describe it as, becomes our natural tendency. So instead of trying to get love, as we start to heal slowly, it's a slow process, we start to become love. We become the ambassador of that light and that pure state of consciousness within the world.